Welcome back, everyone. Today is day 3 of the Bahama bottom sew along with Sonia Estep Designs. Today we're going to be constructing our pants. Yesterday we spent a good bit of time doing detail work on pockets. Today is going to be a much faster day. We're going to get our pants put together and we're going to get ready we're going to finish up everything except for the waistband, which we'll tackle tomorrow. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do with construction is we are going to sew our crotch curves. We're going to start with 2 back pieces. And the most traditional way to do this is to put your fabric right sides together and to either zigzag stitch or serge the seam along your crotch curve. If you would like to use a traditional method of construction, go ahead and do that now. I'm going to show you how to do a French seam for your construction, which gives you a very nice finished enclosed raw edge on the inside of your shorts. To start with a French seam, you want to place your fabric wrong sides together. You are now going to sew your crotch curve with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Keep in mind, this is smaller than the seam allowance written in the pattern. Repeat the exact same steps for your front crotch curve. Once you have sewn your 3/8 inch seam allowance, press the seam allowance to one side. You may need to press slowly when going around the curve. Once you have pressed your seam allowance to the side, trim the seam allowance to 1/8 of an inch. Now we're going to turn our pants and fold them so they are right sides together. Give your existing seam a good press and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance down the crotch curve. This will fully enclose the existing raw edge. Open up your pants, give your seam one last press, and you are done with your back pieces. Follow all of these steps for your front crotch curve as well. Your front and back pieces are now ready to be sewn together. A quick note about adding your buttonholes for your drawstring. The tutorial has you add your buttonholes now. I like to save this until I get to waistband construction so I can have everything pressed and remeasure exactly where I want my buttonholes to be. So I will be covering buttonholes in day 4 when we do the waistband. We are now ready to attach our front piece and our back piece at the side seams. If you would like to sew this in a more traditional way, you may put your pieces right sides together and serge or zigzag stitch down your side seams with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Or you may proceed with the method I am going to demonstrate, which is continuing to use a French seam for construction. The French seam method is the same as it was in the previous step where we sewed our crotch curves. Put your pattern pieces wrong sides together and sew down the side seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press your seam allowances to one side and then trim those seam allowances down to 1/8 of an inch. Once you have trimmed your seam allowance to 1/8 of an inch, turn your pants wrong side out or right sides together and sew the side seams with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The last step we need to do for our side seams is to give them a good press. The last step on our construction is to sew our inseams together. We're going to do this with the exact same method we used for our crotch curves and our side seams, so I'm not going to show all the steps this time. You're going to line up your inseam, wrong sides together, and sew at 3/8 of an inch, trim to 1/8 of an inch, and then turn the pants so they are right sides together, and sew that inseam at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All of our seams are now completed. And that wraps up construction for day 3. Our pants are almost done. Tomorrow we're going to have a little more detail work. We're going to talk about drawstrings and buttonholes and making sure we get the stitching nice and even around our waistband. But tomorrow's the day where we're going to finish everything up, so be sure to tune in for day 4.